Jack Miller stared at the strange readings on his scanner. Something was out there on the rocky surface of Krytos 9. He adjusted his helmet and squinted through the violet haze that hung over the planet's surface. "Base, I'm picking up movement in Sector 7, Jack reported, his voice calm despite the spike of adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Copy that, Miller," came the response from Captain Lisa Reeves. "Proceed with caution. Remember your training." Jack moved forward, each step measured and careful on the uneven terrain. His expedition was supposed to be a standard survey mission. Krytos 9 was marked for potential mining operations, rich with rare minerals that powered the faster-than-light drives of Earth's expanding fleet. The signal grew stronger as he approached a cluster of crystal formations. Something was hiding among them. Jack readied his pulse rifle, protocol for unknown encounters. The crystals glimmered, reflecting the light from Krytos 9's twin suns. Then he saw it. At first, it appeared to be nothing more than a shadow, darker than the others, moving with purpose. Jack froze. His heart pounded against his ribs as recognition dawned. The creature before him was a Noctis, the most feared predator in the known galaxy. "Base," Jack whispered. "I've encountered a Noctis. Requesting immediate backup and extraction." The radio crackled. "Confirmed Noctis sighting. Terminate immediately, Miller. These things have wiped out 3 colonies in the Orion sector." Jack raised his weapon, finger hovering over the trigger. The Noctis shifted, unfurling to its full height, nearly 7 feet of sleek, midnight blue exoskeleton and sinuous muscle. Its skin rippled with iridescent patterns, changing from blue to purple to deep crimson. But something wasn't right. According to every briefing Jack had received, the Noctis should have attacked by now. They were ambush predators, striking without hesitation. This one was simply watching him. "Miller, confirm termination," Captain Reeves demanded through the comm. The Noctis tilted what Jack assumed was its head, the patterns on its skin shifting to a gentle blue-green. It made no aggressive moves. Instead, it extended a limb slowly, pointing to Jack's water container. I don't think it's attacking, Captain," Jack said, lowering his weapon slightly. "Its behavior doesn't match any known Noctis patterns." "That's an order, Miller. These things are cunning. It's trying to lure you in." Jack studied the creature. Every instinct told him this wasn't a trap. He unclipped his water container and cautiously placed it on the ground, then stepped back. The Noctis approached with surprising grace, examined the container, then used a specialized appendage to open it. It consumed some water, then placed the container back exactly where Jack had left it. "Captain, I believe it's attempting communication," Jack said, amazement evident in his voice. "Miller, I'm sending a strike team. Return to base immediately." Jack made a decision then that would change his life, and potentially the relationship between humans and Noctis forever. "Negative, Captain. I'm staying to observe." The Noctis produced a sound like soft wind chimes and moved to a rock formation, scratching marks into the surface. Jack approached cautiously and saw what appeared to be a crude drawing of 2 figures, one human-shaped, one Noctis-shaped, standing side by side. "Miller, you're risking court-martial," Captain Reeves warned. "These creatures have killed hundreds of our people." "With respect, Captain, I think we've been wrong about them," Jack replied, watching as the Noctis continued its drawing. "I think there's been a misunderstanding on a galactic scale. Return to base now, or I'll have you removed from duty permanently." Jack turned off his communicator. The Noctis watched him, its skin now a calm blue. Jack sat down on a rock, lowered his weapon, and began the long process of trying to communicate with a creature everyone else wanted dead. Jack spent the next 3 weeks documenting the Noctis's behavior. He named it Shade because of how it seemed to melt into shadows when startled. Each day, he recorded new observations in his portable data pad, building what would become the first ever comprehensive study of Noctis behavior. "Day 17 with Shade," Jack whispered into his recorder. Its color patterns seem to follow consistent rules. Bright blue appears during our problem-solving sessions. Red flashes when danger is nearby. I believe these are deliberate communications, not just emotional displays. Captain Reeves had reluctantly allowed Jack's research to continue, but only because Dr. Alan Foster, the expedition's xenobiologist, had convinced her of its scientific value. The military command remained skeptical, insisting on armed guards whenever Jack worked with Shade. "You're crazy, Miller," said one of the guards, watching Shade ripple through various color patterns. "That thing could tear you apart in seconds." Jack ignored the comment. He had developed a simple system of lights to communicate with Shade. 1 flash meant yes, 2 meant no, 3 meant danger. To his amazement, Shade had quickly grasped the concept and expanded upon it, creating more complex sequences. Dr. Foster joined Jack on the observation platform. "The patterns aren't random," he confirmed, analyzing Jack's footage. "There's syntax, grammar even. We're looking at a genuine language." Using Foster's linguistic algorithms, Jack created a rudimentary translation device. The breakthrough came on day 21. "Where family?" The translation came through, choppy but clear. Jack felt a chill run down his spine. "You're looking for your family." Shade's skin shifted to a deep purple, a color Jack had come to associate with sadness. The translation device interpreted more color patterns. Lost. Separated. Danger came. Over the next few days, Jack learned that Shade wasn't an adult as they had assumed, but an adolescent separated from its pack during what appeared to be a human mining operation. "The Noctis aren't attacking colonies," Jack explained to Foster and a skeptical Captain Reeves. "They're defending their territory from what they perceive as invasion. Our mining operations have been disrupting their nurseries." "That doesn't explain the deaths of hundreds of settlers," Reeves argued. "Actually, it might," Foster interjected, reviewing Jack's data. "Look at these behavior patterns. The attacks always follow the same sequence. Warning displays, territorial defense, then aggression only as a last resort. We've been misinterpreting their warnings as hostile acts and responding with violence." Jack brought out his latest recordings. "Shade has been teaching me about their social structure. They're not just predators acting on instinct. They're a highly intelligent species with complex social bonds and problem-solving abilities." The evidence was mounting. Shade demonstrated tool use, abstract thinking, and even rudimentary mathematics. Jack had watched in amazement as Shade solved puzzles faster than the computer predictions suggested was possible. "The military won't like this," Reeves said, her expression grim. "They've been developing weapons based on the assumption that the Noctis are mindless killers." Jack's relationship with Shade grew stronger each day. They developed a form of sign language that supplemented the color communication. Jack taught Shade about human customs, and Shade demonstrated hunting techniques and survival skills unique to its species. One evening, as Jack was reviewing his notes, Communications Officer Diane Wells slipped into his quarters. "Jack, you need to be careful," she whispered, glancing nervously at the door. "I overheard General Peterson talking to someone from Central Command. They're planning to capture your Noctis for weapons research. They don't care about your findings. They're calling it a valuable biological asset now." Jack felt his blood run cold. He looked at his data pad, filled with evidence of Shade's intelligence and emotional capacity. He had a decision to make, one that would either end his career or save a species from tragic misunderstanding. Jack's hands trembled as he packed essential supplies into a small bag. The base slept around him, most personnel unaware of the betrayal he was about to commit. According to Diane's information, the military transport would arrive tomorrow to take Shade away for experimentation. "I can't let that happen," Jack whispered to himself. He had disabled the security cameras in Shade's containment area using access codes Diane had provided. Now he approached the reinforced door, punching in the sequence with practiced speed. The door slid open. Inside, Shade's skin flickered with anxious yellow patterns, a warning sign Jack had learned to recognize. "We have to leave," Jack signed, using the hand signals they had developed. "Danger coming." Shade understood immediately. Its colors shifted to deep blue, acknowledgement and trust. The bond between them had grown stronger than Jack could have imagined possible just weeks ago. They moved silently through the corridors of the research facility. Jack had memorized the patrol schedules, and Diane had arranged a brief power outage to cover their escape. When the lights flickered and went out, Jack and Shade made their dash to the hangar bay. "The Scout 4 has enough fuel to reach the outer colonies," Jack explained as they approached the small ship. "From there, we can." An alarm blared suddenly, cutting through the momentary darkness. Emergency lights bathed the corridor in harsh red. "Intruder alert. Security breach in Sector 7, announced the automated system. "Run," Jack shouted, abandoning stealth. They sprinted the final stretch to the hangar. Shade moved with astonishing speed, its body almost liquid in motion. Two security guards appeared at the far end of the corridor, raising their weapons. "Stop or we'll shoot," one called. Shade's skin flashed warning colors. Before Jack could react, Shade had moved in front of him, shielding him with its body. The gesture nearly broke Jack's heart. This deadly predator was willing to die to protect him. "Hold your fire," Jack shouted. "We're not hostile." A pulse blast struck the wall near them. Jack yanked open the hangar door, and they tumbled through together. The Scout 4 sat waiting, its engines pre-warmed thanks to Diane's preparations. Jack slammed his palm on the launch sequence, and the ship's doors opened. "Get in," he urged Shade, who flowed into the craft with remarkable agility. Captain Reeves' voice came over the facility-wide communication system. "Miller, stop this now. You're throwing away your career and possibly your life. This is treason." Jack hesitated for just a moment before climbing into the pilot's seat. "Sometimes doing the right thing looks like treason," he muttered, firing up the engines. The hangar doors began closing. Jack punched the thrusters, and the Scout 4 shot forward, barely clearing the narrowing gap. They burst into the violet atmosphere of Krytos 9, accelerating hard toward the stars. "All units, we have a rogue ship departing the research facility," Reeves announced over the comm channel. "Intercept and disable. Capture the Noctis specimen alive if possible." Two military fighters launched from the base, their engines burning hot as they pursued the smaller, more nimble Scout 4. Jack pushed the ship's systems to their limits, heading for a nearby asteroid field. "Hold on," he told Shade, who had strapped itself in using the harness Jack had taught it to use. "This is going to be rough." The fighters fired warning shots across their bow. Jack rolled the ship, diving deeper into the asteroid field. The larger military vessels struggled to follow. "They can't maneuver well in here," Jack explained to Shade. "But neither can we." Shade's skin flickered with blue and green patterns. Its limb extended toward the navigation controls, indicating a path through the spinning rocks that Jack hadn't noticed. "You can see patterns I can't," Jack realized. "Show me." Together, they navigated the treacherous field, Jack controlling the ship while Shade guided their path. Behind them, one of the military fighters clipped an asteroid and spun away, damaged but not destroyed. Captain Reeves' voice came through one final time. "Miller, you won't get far. We'll find you." Jack cut the communication. He exchanged looks with Shade, whose colors now showed a pattern Jack had never seen before, something that looked almost like hope. Jack gripped the controls as alarms blared throughout the small ship. The Scout 4 shuddered violently, systems failing after their desperate escape through the asteroid field. "We're losing power," Jack muttered, scanning the emergency readouts. "Engine damage is critical. We need to land somewhere. Fast." Shade moved beside him, its skin pulsing with concerned amber patterns. Through their rudimentary communication system, it pointed to a small moon orbiting a gas giant on their navigation screen. "Teros." Jack read the designation. "Uninhabited, harsh atmosphere, but it's our only option." The descent was brutal. The Scout 4's damaged engines fought against Teros' gravity, metal groaning as they plummeted through thick clouds. Jack wrestled with the controls, sweat beading on his forehead. "This is going to be rough," he warned Shade. "Brace yourself." The impact came with a tremendous crash. The ship skidded across rocky terrain, leaving a trail of debris before coming to rest near a jagged cliff edge. Inside, emergency lights flickered weakly. Jack raised his head from the control panel, tasting blood where he'd bitten his lip. "Shade, you okay?" The Noctis uncurled from its protective position. Remarkably, it seemed largely unharmed. Its resilient exoskeleton had protected it from the worst of the crash. Shade moved to Jack, skin shifting to concerned purple hues as it noticed the cut on his face. Jack checked the ship's systems. Life support failing. External atmosphere is toxic to humans. He looked at his supplies. "My emergency oxygen will last 3 days at most." They ventured outside, Jack in his environmental suit. Taros was a desolate place. Jagged rock formations stretching into the distance under a sickly yellow sky. The air was thick with sulfurous compounds that would corrode human lungs within minutes. "We need shelter," Jack said, scanning the horizon, "and a way to repair the ship." Shade seemed unbothered by the harsh atmosphere. Its color patterns shifted as it investigated their surroundings. To Jack's surprise, it appeared to be thriving in conditions that would kill him. They established a makeshift camp in a nearby cave. Jack rationed his oxygen while trying to repair the communications array. Each day, Shade would disappear for hours, returning with strange objects. Crystalline formations, peculiar fungi, and once, a small lizard-like creature that scurried away upon seeing Jack. On the 4th day, disaster struck. Jack's oxygen supply ran out faster than expected. He gasped, vision blurring as he stumbled back to the cave. Shade found him collapsed at the entrance, struggling to breathe the toxic air that had seeped into his damaged suit. Through his fading consciousness, Jack watched as Shade's body began to change. Its exoskeleton opened in unexpected ways, revealing internal structures that pulsed with bioluminescent energy. Shade positioned itself over Jack, creating what looked like a living tent. From specialized glands, it began secreting a clear substance that formed a bubble around Jack's head. Jack's first breath of the filtered air sent him into a coughing fit, but gradually his vision cleared. Somehow, Shade was processing the toxic atmosphere, creating breathable air for him. "You're saving my life," Jack whispered in awe. Over the next days, their situation became a strange kind of routine. Shade would filter air for Jack several hours each day, allowing his suit to recharge its emergency systems. When not helping Jack breathe, Shade hunted local wildlife, bringing safe portions for Jack to eat. One night, as they huddled in their cave shelter, a pack of native predators approached. 6-legged creatures with razor teeth and excellent night vision. Jack reached for his pulse rifle, but Shade moved first. Its skin flashed with brilliant, intimidating patterns, and it produced sounds unlike any Jack had heard before, deep, resonant vibrations that seemed to shake the very ground. The predators retreated, unwilling to challenge this strange newcomer. "You're full of surprises," Jack said, patting Shade's exoskeleton gratefully. Shade's skin rippled with colors that Jack had come to recognize as something like pleasure or pride. In the harsh environment of Taros, their unusual friendship wasn't just continuing, it was growing stronger through shared survival. Jack realized that each of them had saved the other now, creating a bond that transcended species. Jack and Shade ventured deeper into Taros' rocky landscape. After 3 weeks of survival, they had established a reliable routine. Jack's repaired oxygen recycler gave him mobility, while Shade's hunting skills provided food. "The ship is beyond repair," Jack admitted one morning, reviewing his diagnostic tools. "We need to find another way off this moon." Shade's skin rippled with thoughtful blue patterns. It gestured toward a distant mountain range they hadn't yet explored. Through their improving communication system, Shade conveyed that something important lay in that direction. "You sense something there?" Jack asked. Shade confirmed with a pulse of bright color. Its behavior had changed subtly over the past few days, a new urgency in its movements, attention frequently drawn to those far mountains. They traveled for 2 days across the harsh terrain. As they climbed a steep ridge, Shade suddenly froze. Its skin flashed warning colors. "What is it?" Jack whispered, crouching behind a boulder. The ground beneath them trembled slightly. Jack peered over the rock and saw the surface of a nearby cave entrance ripple, then part. From within emerged 3 Noctis, their exoskeletons darker and more elaborate than Shade's. "More of your kind," Jack breathed in amazement. Shade moved forward slowly, its colors shifting in complex patterns. Communication Jack couldn't fully interpret. The other Noctis responded with their own color displays, some seeming aggressive, others curious. One of the larger Noctis advanced toward Jack, its skin flashing threatening red. Shade immediately positioned itself between them, emitting color patterns so intense they almost hurt Jack's eyes. "It's protecting me," Jack realized. A standoff ensued, with Shade apparently arguing Jack's case. Finally, the larger Noctis's colors shifted to a neutral blue. It made a gesture Jack interpreted as "follow," then retreated into the cave entrance. "They want us to go with them," Jack said, uncertainty in his voice, "into their home." Shade confirmed with a reassuring pattern Jack had come to trust. Together, they followed the Noctis into the cave. The passage descended steeply. Jack's helmet lights revealed a tunnel system, unlike anything he'd expected. Not rough natural formations, but smooth engineered surfaces with intricate patterns etched into the walls. "This was built," Jack whispered in awe. "They didn't just find these caves, they created them." The tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber that took Jack's breath away. Hundreds of Noctis moved through what appeared to be a complex colony. Bioluminescent fungi provided soft lighting. Structures of crystal and some unknown material formed dwellings and communal spaces. Most striking were the technological elements Jack spotted throughout the colony. Devices that seemed to merge biological components with advanced engineering. "This isn't a primitive species," Jack murmured, recording everything with his suit camera. "This is a civilization." The Noctis led them to a central chamber where a particularly large individual waited. Its exoskeleton bore elaborate markings that suggested authority or age. Shade engaged in intense color communication with this elder. Jack watched in fascination as images formed on a nearby wall, projected somehow by the elder Noctis. He recognized scenes of human mining operations, followed by images of destroyed Noctis nurseries. "They're showing us what happened," Jack said. "The conflicts between our species." More images appeared. Noctis attempting to communicate with humans, humans responding with weapons, misunderstandings escalating to violence. Then came pictures of Noctis rescuing trapped human colonists from cave-ins. Actions completely contrary to their reputation as mindless killers. "They've been trying to communicate peaceful intentions," Jack realized. "But we couldn't understand their methods." The elder Noctis approached Jack directly. It extended a specialized limb, offering what appeared to be a small crystalline object. Shade encouraged Jack with gentle colors. Cautiously, Jack accepted the crystal. When he touched it, his mind filled with clear impressions, not quite words, but unmistakable meaning. "They want peace," Jack said aloud, overwhelmed by the direct communication. "They've been trying to establish contact for decades, but our species kept misinterpreting their intentions." The elder Noctis conveyed another message through the crystal, an invitation for Jack to become the first human ambassador to their species. Jack looked at Shade, then at the colony around them, a hidden civilization with technology and culture humans had never suspected. He thought of the needless deaths on both sides, the misunderstandings that had painted the Noctis as monsters. "I would be honored," Jack replied, knowing this discovery could change everything. Jack spent 2 months with the Noctis colony, learning their language and customs. With Shade's help, he created a more sophisticated translation device, using components from his damaged ship and Noctis biotech. The elders taught him about their history, a species that had evolved on a harsh world similar to Terra's, developing extraordinary biological adaptations. The mining operations weren't just destroying territory, Jack explained to the lead elder, whose name translated roughly as Deep Wisdom. Humans had no idea we were damaging nurseries. We thought the attacks were unprovoked. Deep Wisdom's colors shifted sadly. Our warnings were misunderstood as threats. Each attempt to communicate drove our species further apart. The breakthrough came when a Noctis scout detected a human search vessel in orbit around Terra's. Rather than hiding, Jack made a bold decision. "I need to contact that ship," he told Shade. "It's time to bridge our worlds." Using the colony's surprising technology, they boosted Jack's emergency beacon. Within hours, a shuttle descended to the coordinates Jack provided. Captain Reeves herself led the heavily armed recovery team, their weapons trained on the cave entrance where Jack waited. "Miller," Reeves called out, shock evident in her voice when she saw him alive. "Stand away from that creature immediately." Jack stayed beside Shade. "Captain, I need you to listen. Everything we believed about the Noctis was wrong. You're suffering from prolonged exposure to this moon's atmosphere," Reeves said, motioning for her team to advance. "We're taking you home and capturing Shade for research." "That's not happening." Jack stood firm. "Before you do anything rash, there's something you need to see." He nodded to Shade, who made a complex color signal. From the cave emerged several Noctis elders, including Deep Wisdom. The recovery team raised their weapons in alarm. "Hold your fire," Jack shouted. "These beings are not our enemies." Reeves stared in disbelief at the gathering Noctis. "Miller, do you have any idea what you've done? These creatures have killed hundreds." "Because we didn't understand them," Jack interrupted. He held up his data pad, which contained months of research. "Dr. Foster and Diane need to see this immediately. I've documented everything." The tense standoff lasted nearly an hour before Reeves reluctantly agreed to a controlled meeting aboard her ship. Jack insisted that Shade accompany him as the Noctis representative. Back at the human research base, Jack faced a tribunal for desertion. He stood tall as military officials listed his violations of protocol and direct orders. "Before you continue," Jack said, "there are people who should be heard." Dr. Foster stepped forward, having reviewed Jack's extensive research. "Miller's data is conclusive. The Noctis possess intelligence equal to or exceeding our own. Their biological capabilities are extraordinary, potentially revolutionary for our medical science." Diane Wells presented communications logs she had secretly preserved. "There's more. I've uncovered classified incidents where Noctis actually saved human lives during mining accidents. These reports were deliberately suppressed to maintain the narrative that justified military action against them." The tribunal fell silent as Jack played recordings showing the complex Noctis society. Most compelling was footage of the nurseries, vulnerable young Noctis the humans had unknowingly threatened. "The attacks were defensive," Jack explained. "The Noctis were protecting their children." General Peterson, who had planned to capture Shade, shifted uncomfortably. "Even if this is true, Miller, your actions remain insubordinate." "With respect, sir," Jack replied. "Sometimes disobedience serves a higher purpose. Had I followed orders, we would still be locked in conflict with a species that could be our greatest ally." The debate raged for days. Military hardliners insisted the Noctis remained a threat, while scientists became increasingly fascinated by Jack's discoveries. Public opinion began to shift as carefully selected footage was released showing Noctis intelligence and culture. The turning point came when Shade, using Jack's translation device, addressed the tribunal directly. Its colors translated into clear English on screens around the room. "Our peoples have misunderstood each other for too long." Shade's message read, "We have technologies to offer, knowledge to share. We seek friendship, not conflict." Jack watched as skepticism gave way to wonder on the faces of the tribunal members. Captain Reeves, who had been his fiercest critic, finally spoke. "I've seen enough," she said quietly. Miller's actions, while against regulations, have prevented what could have been a catastrophic war based on misunderstanding. 6 months after the tribunal, Jack stood nervously in the grand meeting hall of the Interstellar Council on Earth. Delegates from 12 different human colonies filled the chamber, along with representatives from 3 allied alien species. None of them had expected to witness this historic moment, the first official human-Noctis diplomatic summit. Shade stood beside Jack, its exoskeleton polished to a deep blue sheen for the occasion. Both wore specially designed translator badges that converted Noctis color patterns to spoken language and human speech to colors the Noctis could understand. "Stop fidgeting," Jack whispered to Shade. "You look great." Shade's skin rippled with amused patterns. "You are the one trembling," came the translated response in Jack's earpiece. When Admiral Franklin called the summit to order, Jack led the Noctis delegation forward. Deep Wisdom and 5 other elders followed, their movements graceful despite the unfamiliar gravity of Earth. "Just months ago, we considered these beings our greatest threat," Admiral Franklin addressed the assembly. "Today, we welcome them as potential allies, thanks to the courage and insight of one man who chose understanding over fear." Jack felt his face flush with embarrassment at the praise. He had become something of a celebrity since returning to Earth, the man who befriended the galaxy's most feared predator. Children asked for his autograph. Scientists begged for interviews. Military academies revised their first contact protocols based on his experiences. The summit proceeded with formal introductions and presentations. Jack watched with pride as Deep Wisdom displayed holographic images showing Noctis achievements in bioengineering and environmental adaptation. The human scientists in attendance could barely contain their excitement at the medical applications of Noctis biological technologies. Their cellular regeneration techniques could revolutionize human medicine, Dr. Foster explained to the assembly. "Early experiments suggest we might cure conditions we've struggled with for centuries." In return, human engineers presented advances in space travel and energy production that fascinated the Noctis. What followed was not just diplomatic negotiation, but genuine exchange of knowledge between species who had once feared each other. During a break in the proceedings, representatives from the Veldari Confederation, a powerful spacefaring species, approached Jack. "We have observed the Noctis from a distance for centuries," the Veldari ambassador said through a translator. "Never did we imagine humans would be the ones to establish peaceful contact. Your species continues to surprise us." Jack smiled. Sometimes the most unlikely friendships prove the most valuable. The summit culminated in the signing of the first accord between humans and Noctis. The agreement established protected Noctis territories, collaborative research initiatives, and cultural exchange programs. Most significantly, it created a joint defense protocol. The former enemies would now protect each other from external threats. After the ceremony, Jack and Shade walked through the gardens outside the council building. Earth's sunset painted the sky in colors that reminded Jack of Noctis communication patterns. "Your world is beautiful," Shade said, its skin reflecting the golden light. "Different from ours, but beautiful." Jack nodded. "Hard to believe that just a year ago, I was pointing a weapon at you on Krytos 9. Shade's colors shifted to a pattern Jack recognized as thoughtful reflection. Fear is the natural response to the unknown. Courage is choosing to learn instead of destroy. A group of school children on a field trip spotted them from across the garden. Their teacher, recognizing Jack and Shade from news reports, brought them over for an impromptu meeting. "Are you really friends with the alien?" one small boy asked Jack. Jack smiled. "Best friends. Shade saved my life more than once." The children stared in wonder as Shade demonstrated simple color patterns for them. One brave girl reached out to touch Shade's exoskeleton, giggling when Shade gently returned the gesture. Later that evening, Jack received news that he and Shade had been appointed as lead ambassadors for the new Joint Species Council. Their first assignment would be establishing a permanent human presence on the Noctis homeworld, a place no human had ever visited. "Ready for another adventure?" Jack asked. Shade's skin displayed a pattern that needed no translation: excitement, friendship, and trust. As they looked out over the Earth City lights coming on in the dusk, Jack reflected on how a single choice to observe rather than destroy had changed the course of history for two species.